at CNN talking about the latest information that we've found about the Epstein files.
And these are emails that show Jeffrey Epstein mentioning Donald Trump by name multiple times in private correspondence that he had with people, including Ghislaine Maxwell, obviously his longtime associate and accomplice, and also the author Michael Wolff, in a time span of about the last 15 years or so in these emails. Now, these are coming out from the House Oversight Committee. They had issued a bipartisan subpoena to Jeffrey Epstein's estate, John, as you know, earlier this year. And so they've gotten their hands on a trove of documents. And these are emails that included Jeffrey Epstein on them. They were sent either to him or from him that mentioned Donald Trump before he was in office and also while he was in office during his first term. And I want to walk you through these emails of what exactly we are reading in Jeffrey Epstein's own words in these emails that have been released by the House Oversight Committee. And in one of them, Jeffrey Epstein says, and I should note, Trump did not send or receive any of these messages. He's not a party to these emails, John, but these are emails from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. This is one from April 2nd, 2011. And in this email, Jeffrey Epstein writes to Ghislaine Maxwell and says, quote, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. There's a name that's redacted, which the House Oversight Committee has said is a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's. Obviously, we have not been able to independently confirm that because her name is redacted from this email. But they say redacted spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there." Ghislaine Maxwell responds to that email, John, and says, quote, "I have been thinking about that."
That was Caton Collins from CNN talking about the latest revelations from the Epstein files. Our guest in this half hour is Sarah Jones, who is the editor in chief of Politicus USA. Sarah, why don't I get your reaction to that clip we played from CNN about new revelations in the Epstein files?
Well, there's so many things going on, Brad. I mean, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to
Always a
be
pleasure, Sarah.
here with you. Everyone should be reading you about these emails that were released. I mean, there are so many different ways to approach this, but politically, I would say the first thing for Donald Trump is that they directly contradict the story that he's given about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And there's also the troubling revelation that he spent time alone with one of the victims. That victim did say that she had not seen Trump do anything, with any of the other that was illegal, I guess. But it still raises the issue: what is he doing alone with this underage victim in Epstein's home? But I think
For
larger
several hours.
for several hours. If we zoom out of that, though, and those issues, and I do want to put a pin in this because I want all of the victims to get what they deserve and should have had over a decade ago. This has been a crime. This is a cover up of epic proportions. And I think it's odd, but the conservatives that kind of were behind Donald Trump's rise to power are the ones that were really focused on this. And they were buying into this QAnon conspiracy. They thought that Donald Trump was going to be the person who was going to champion all of these victims and finally put an end to this, what they saw as this global cabal of pedophiles. And it turns out, and sex trafficking, and it turns out they were sort of right that there was this global cabal. It's just that their guy is leading the charge to cover it up. So I think that that has to be a big collision in terms of his support, and we do see some of that erosion of support for him. But so he rose to power with QAnon and all of the power that was behind that conspiracy. When he first came into office the second term, he handed out those binders, this is all the Epstein files to all the conservative media. Then it turned out those were empty. And I think what we've been seeing this entire term is him covering this up over and over and over again. He is trying to stop the release of these files. Why is he doing that? That is a question we don't have answers to yet, but I would just put a pin in this other thing, which is I've been watching what's going on with formerly Prince Andrew. Donald Trump went over in his first term to meet with Prince Andrew. And at some point, Epstein and Trump and Prince Andrew reportedly met up. Very soon after that, Epstein was arrested here. And when you look at some of these emails that were released, just the week before he was arrested, Epstein was saying that he could bring Trump down and that he was a big threat to Donald Trump. Right. So I think that it isn't just like, did Donald Trump, and it isn't just if he has done anything with any of these sex trafficking victims, that is not only criminal but abhorrent and would be a tragedy. This would be the greatest scandal of any president in our history. Um, but even worse than that, um, is is he covering this up for all of these other powerful people? And if he is, why? Why is he covering this up for them? Because it looks like that's what's happening. You know, we can't say that for sure. We have to have all the evidence trail, but that is what everything looks like on the surface. And you know, we're going to get this Epstein discharge petition vote now, and Republicans say they've got enough defectors in their caucus to get this done. And now Trump just came out last night and suddenly, after trying to suppress this and threatening people, calling them to the White House and sicking his, dogs. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying she's getting threats to that extent. That is the effort he's gone to suppress this. And now, when it looks like he's going to be humiliated because his own party is going to vote for this, suddenly he says, oh, go ahead, release them, go ahead and vote to release them. But that doesn't mean we're going to get them. As,
No, it doesn't.
right? Because as Massey has said, as the Republican from Kentucky has said, uh, this new investigation that Trump opened into Democrats that are mentioned in these emails. And again, like, no one, you don't hear a single Democrat over here saying, oh no, don't come for Bill Clinton, don't come for anybody that's mentioned. Nobody cares. It's like, people have to be held accountable. That should be what everybody wants. Everyone should want that, no matter what side of the aisle the person is on. And I
You
think
would
that is,
think so.
you would, especially when it comes to raping children and children who have been sex trafficked. Um, so Massey said that's, if that investigation is going to be used as a reason why they can't release these files, and I think we know Trump's game by now, that is right up there with how he plays the game. And it's just like his taxes. Remember, he said share his um, he couldn't share his tax returns because he was being audited, and then the IRS was like, no, you're not, and yes, you can share them anyway. And he didn't. And that went on, and it was just an excuse that worked because that's what has always worked for him.
Yeah, it already has worked for him, and he's always finding a way to try to weasel out of this, as you mentioned. The latest theory is, even if the House votes to disclose, he's going to say he can't release the files now because there's a DOJ investigation going on of Democrats who might have been part of the ring, which, of course, the Trump, the president ordered. It's just really sorry. We're going to have to take a short break now. For our radio listeners, our guest is Sarah Jones, editor in chief of Politicus USA, and we will continue our conversation about the Epstein files.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak?
Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. In this half hour, we're discussing the infamous Epstein files with Sarah Jones, the editor in chief of Politicus USA. Sarah, it seems to me that Trump is mishandling this whole Epstein file controversy very badly. Sometimes I think he'd be better off if he just released everything and got it out of the way. You know, and the story changes so much. Last week he posted on Trump's social that, oh, this whole Epstein thing is old news. No one cares about it anymore. Of course, way back when he said there were no Epstein files. It was a Democratic hoax. And right now he's getting killed by a death of 1,000 cuts, it seems to me, because there are all sorts of things that are leaking in the files that just make him look worse and worse and worse. And then her defenders, his defenders. You got Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, who is supposedly a devout, born again Christian who's doing everything he can to protect Trump and the revelations in the files. You got one of his supporters, Megan Kelly, who last week said, it's not so bad. It wasn't, he's not a pedophile because he's only having sex with 15-year-olds. What is the story with their response to this problem?
Well, I think right there, and I wrote about Megan Kelly because I wrote about her many years ago when she defended the Duggar family for not stopping their own son from molesting their two children. And she gave them this interview that was widely criticized as being this, kind of image rehab for them. And then he went on to be busted and convicted for possessing child sexual assault material. So you can see from that what kind of implications it has when you do not deal with a child sex abuser and you don't deal with predators and you don't deal with sex traffickers. And Megan Kelly, that is a good example of something I know that we want to talk about, which is like that's what one part of his base is doing. Oh, we can't defend this because in the past, like she has said, oh, you had sex with a 17-year-old, you need to be convicted. Now she's changing her tune that 15 and trafficked, which is illegal no matter if they're of age or not, now that's okay, right? Because they keep moving the goalposts for this guy, and I think that says a lot. Like you don't have an a you. She has even said, why doesn't he just release this stuff? That's the question you ask, or that's the question any sane person is asking. Why don't you just release this? It's causing you so much stress, with damage in the politically. Why don't you just release it? So that's the question. They will make any excuse for him. She's already excused having sex with a 15-year-old who's been sex trafficked. So I would say that she probably thinks Donald Trump did that. That was her excuse for Epstein, but she probably thinks Donald Trump did that. So she's getting her excuses ready. So if that's not the thing, what is
Sarah, I'm going to have to interrupt you again. We got to take another quick break to bring back our radio listeners. This is Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our guest is Sarah Jones, editor in chief of Politicus USA, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I'm glad we have our radio listeners back. I want to remind them that if they want to watch Deadline DC as well as listen to it, you can watch it at twitter.com/Brad Bannon, at facebook.com/Deadline DC with Brad Bannon /videos, or you can see it at youtube.com /at Deadline DC. Our guest in this half hour is Sarah Jones, editor in chief of Politicus USA. We've been talking about the Epstein files. I'm going to make a statement about the Epstein files. I follow social media religiously, probably too religiously. But, every time I hear one of these revelations about the Epstein files, part of me says, good, Trump is finally going, you know, to get his due. But at the other hand, a part of me says, this is really disgusting reading about all this stuff. What happened to us, Sarah?
no, I think that every day, and I'm so glad you brought that up, Brad, because I worry about all of the um, male and female victims of, you know, molestation, child rape, I sex trafficking. I worry about rape victims who are adults now that are getting triggered. All of this stuff is so ugly. And even getting ready to talk to you today, there's so many things in these emails, and I'm like, that everyone is discussing this part of it, and the Bubba thing. And it's like, so now I am being forced to discuss things. I didn't get into this job to be talking about you know what I mean, sex with
I
children,
hear you.
and who Donald Trump might have given a certain thing to. Um, this is absolutely disgusting, but this happened in his first term because, he was bragging about sexually assaulting women and that was on tape. And then everybody, that's what a lot of what defined his first term. The Me Too movement came out of that. And um, so we're always in the gutter with this guy. He doesn't lead from any kind of position of aspirational character that our children can look up to, and we've all become sullied by. All day long we live in this filth now. Like it's just living in the trough of disgusting filth. That's what it is. It makes me sick.
Yeah, it really does. Well, let me ask you another question about this. The Epstein files will become public at some point. My guess is you just can't keep a thing secret like this down. And my question is, what's going to happen after everything becomes public? I mean, Donald Trump's still eligible to be president until January 2029. I can't see the Senate rounding up 67 votes in the Senate to remove him from office, even if the House impeaches them. So what's going to be what's the end game here? What's going to happen?
Well, he will be politically wounded beyond repair. But what is more importantly, because he's going to go one day. What are we going to be left with in this country? They have um, kicked Prince Andrew out of his, grace and favor home, right? And I don't think he's suffering too much. I guess the Saudis or somebody offered him some big castle to live in. I don't know, but all of this is so disgusting. It's like the way all of these people are being protected and catered to. They don't ever really pay any price for what they have allegedly done. Um, but you know, at least they took some sort of measure. But over here, like we are hamstringed, or we are stopped from doing what is right by Republicans. The party that has been talking for 50 years about their moral superiority and their right to dictate all of our personal decisions because they are Christians, allegedly. They are the ones that are making it impossible to hold child sex predators accountable. And they are now saying that a uh, convicted pedophile and sex trafficker wasn't actually a pedophile. So we have no. How do we do business with people like? How do we protect our country from people like this? We are stuck at this point.
Well, yeah, let me ask you another question. As you said a few minutes ago, there was that famous episode with Entertainment Tonight where he was in a van talking to one of the hosts of the show, bragging about his sexual exploits. He was convicted of 34 felony counts last year before the presidential election. What allowed him to get elected president a second time anyway? I mean, what happened? Someone was seriously asleep at the switch. How did he become president? Because we
Well,
had all sorts of hints about this.
yeah, and he's also an adjudicated rapist now. So, and they still voted for him. I would have to say, and in this, I remember when the Democrats started the impeachment process against him in his first term, and I said, this isn't going to go anywhere. Like this, and everyone with all the pundits, everybody was like, "Oh, this is just like Nixon. He's going to be brought down." I'm like, it's not like Nixon because he has this entire um, conservative media apparatus out here to protect him with his base. They're never going to turn on him. And he has this control that's like mafia control over his own party and over the Republicans who have been elected to office. So they're not going to do their job, right? All of these people are they're only answering to him. They're not answering to the United States Constitution. They're not answering to the voters. They're not answering to the way this country is supposed to operate. So That is how I think we got here. And then he slowly took over, and there are all those studies that showed, not all of them, there were a few studies that came out that showed how right wing media managed to constantly get their narratives pushed into mainstream media, and now they've taken over mainstream media, and they've got the kookiest people running. They got the running CBS. They're out here in the streets running wild, and they are spreading their propaganda. They are um I can't even tell you CBS, like some of the stuff they've been saying. They said it about somebody that my family personally knows who was a murder victim, slandering her because she's a Muslim. She was a Muslim. It's disgusting. It's so this is what they've done. So they've got this whole apparatus that's out there to protect him. Now I don't know. It's weird that with all of that, he cannot seem to get over this Epstein thing. Even with all this protection, and going after people that criticize him, threatening people. So I don't know where we're going to end up. But right now, this is a national shame, right? This is a national shame. I mean,
National
it
disgrace.
is. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so sad for our country. I'm in
Yeah,
despair to
I
see
am.
it this way.
I know exactly how you feel. Sarah, thanks for joining us today. Our guest in this half hour talking about the Epstein files was Sarah Jones, editor in chief of Politicus USA. I didn't plan on devoting a whole half hour to Epstein files, but that's where we are today, folks.